You keep telling yourself you're just learning business. You keep pretending the game is about talent, effort, and grit. But the real truth is darker. Winners are usually not the best people. They're the fastest people at finding the loopholes in whatever rules exist right now and cashing out before the crowd realizes the game has changed. Most people don't fail because they're stupid. They fail because they can't bear the moment when the story stops working. They can't tolerate admitting that yesterday's strategy is dead, so they keep funding a corpse with their hope and call it sticking to the plan. This video is about the 4-year rhythm people claim to see in online business trends, and what that rhythm actually reveals about human psychology, money behavior, and the hidden self that keeps you trapped. We're going to walk through how cash flow migrates from one platform to another, why business models mutate like living organisms, and why the same emotional traps keep repeating. You will recognize your own patterns if you've ever chased a trend, bought into hype, or felt a strange urgency to move simply because everyone else moved. Welcome to the hidden self, the place where we stop pretending, the place where we say what people hide from themselves, especially when it's painful. At the core, business and investing are not separate worlds. They are the same mechanism wearing different costumes. Investing is simple in theory. Identify a zone where prices are low, put money in, wait, then sell when the price is high. Business is just the same principle with more noise, more branding, and more emotional theater. You don't get rich by working harder. You get rich by entering at the lowest cost of access and exiting when liquidity is still thick. And what is the lowest cost of access? It's not only money. It's attention, it's distribution, it's speed, it's the ability to get in before the market crowds in and compresses profit margins until your dream becomes a fragile spreadsheet. Let's get specific. In early phases of a trend, the market behaves like a generous host. Costs are low, competition is still weak, customers are not yet experienced at comparing offers. The audience doesn't demand proof yet. They buy on curiosity, on novelty, on the relief of being included. That's the low price zone, but people confuse low price zone with low risk. They think, if the barrier is small, the outcome must be safe. That's the first self-deception. The second deception is believing your advantage will last forever. The market never promised you stability. It only offered you a temporary window of irrational optimism. Now, the reason many people believe in a 4-year cycle is because platforms often mature in a predictable way. First, there's discovery. Then there's exploitation. Then there's saturation. Then there's punishment. The punishment looks like higher costs, lower conversion rates, and stricter rules. It looks like everyone suddenly pretending they never believed in the trend. It looks like your competitors getting more efficient while you keep repeating the same mistakes with better fonts. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The 4-year cycle is not a law. It's a behavioral pattern. It's the time it takes for human emotions to fully move through their stages. When you understand that, you stop thinking your success is about the platform. You start realizing it's about psychology, timing, and exit behavior. The hidden self doesn't just block your learning, it blocks your willingness to exit. Most people stay too long because leaving feels like losing. They mistake reality for personal identity. If you've ever told yourself, I've invested too much already, so I can't stop now, you already know what I'm talking about. The first major cycle we'll study is the 4-year trend that shows how cash flow rewards the pioneers, then punishes the followers. In Vietnam, from around 2019 to 2020, there was a boom and collapse of the T-chain model based on pay by the cup and fight for vibes, the kind of place that sells not only drinks but belonging. The marketing was never subtle. The promise was always emotional. Come here, post here, feel modern, feel clean, feel selected. In the beginning, the market had a gap. Young people wanted openness and cleanliness without expensive cooling systems and designer interiors like the premium chains. They wanted a place that felt more tasteful than a sidewalk tea stall, but more affordable than a high-end cafe that made you feel awkward for ordering something small. Pioneers noticed the gap early, and they didn't just build a store, they built a machine that could reproduce the vibe. The visual identity was sharp, the check-in spots were engineered, the entry cost was low because their initial setup wasn't luxury. It looked stylish, but it wasn't actually expensive. Now comes the cash flow trick that most followers ignore. Profit wasn't mainly coming from retail margins. Retail margins were constrained. Their cost of goods was a small fraction of the price. They could sell cups and keep customers happy, but they couldn't scale without bleeding cash. The real money came from B2B, franchising the concept to people who wanted to feel like entrepreneurs without understanding the risk. This is where you need to watch yourself closely. The franchising wave creates a psychological illusion. It makes the market look like a gold rush where the real work is already done. The franchisor packages the recipe, provides standardized operations, and sells you the dream of stability. They sell you a path. They don't sell you the part where timing matters, where rent rises, where competition kills margin, and where demand eventually gets saturated. In early stages, that packaging works because the first franchisees become living proof. Customers line up. People post this place is always full. The social proof becomes its own fuel, and the hidden self, the one that craves certainty, gets fed. FOMO becomes a financial weapon. People aren't only buying tea, they're buying the feeling that they joined early enough to be safe. They're buying emotional permission to believe they will win without being patient. So then the crowd arrives. Office workers, independent sellers, side hustlers who suddenly feel their monthly income is too small, too slow, too humiliating. They look at a trend and think, why not me? They don't ask whether demand is sustainable. They don't ask whether their location will be the next winner or the next victim. They assume they're stepping into a stable market because the pioneer stores look stable in photos. But the market's stability is temporary. What you see as successful stores are often just the first wave before the crowd compresses outcomes. As more franchisees open, density increases within a small area. This is where the fantasy dies. When too many stores exist in the same geography, customers don't multiply, they just distribute. Each store fights for the same people, and the losers start bleeding silently. And then comes the cruel part. The people who join later pay higher costs. Rent goes up because landlords notice demand. Franchise fees become more expensive because the franchisor is now selling certainty to impatient buyers. Your entry happens in the high price zone, even though the dream you bought into pretends it's still low price. This is a key psychological mechanism. You are not competing with other businesses, you are competing with time. If you arrive in the wrong phase, you're paying for the advantage that already disappeared. The latecomers often don't realize they're buying the leftover capacity of the market. They think they're buying a proven model, but they're actually buying a model after the profitable conditions have moved elsewhere. When the crowd saturates, the market does a brutal adjustment. It doesn't negotiate, it filters, it removes weak operators and forces them to either sell cheap, close, or accept a painful lesson. In 2020, a black swan event hit, COVID-19, but the pandemic wasn't the sole cause of collapse. It was a catalyst. The real cause was already inside the model: aggressive expansion, thin buffers, heavy fixed costs, and decisions made under emotional pressure rather than financial resilience. When social distancing arrived, foot traffic froze, revenue dropped, but fixed expenses didn't vanish. Rent stayed, staff salaries stayed. The only thing that stopped was the illusion. So the market didn't punish them because it hates entrepreneurs. It punished them because the structure couldn't survive reality. Weak capitalization met external shock, and the result was predictable. This is what people don't want to hear. Most collapses are not sudden, they are delayed. They happen because you stayed too long after the market stopped supporting you. Your hidden self hates this idea because it suggests you should have known. It suggests you should have monitored margins, tracked unit economics, built exit strategies, and prepared for low liquidity days. Instead, most people commit a psychological crime against themselves. They romanticize the past, they treat the original plan like a sacred identity. They keep pouring money into a business that has stopped producing cash flow because leaving feels like betrayal of who they thought they were. That is why the most important skill in business isn't building, it's exiting. When you fail to exit, you turn investment into self-harm. You keep calling it recovering while it's actually denial. Now let's move to the next cycle, the one many people mythologize: Facebook ads from around 2014 to 2018. This period created the first wave of online millionaires in Vietnam, and it also created a wave of people who later lost money without understanding why they ever won. The core conditions were rare, competition was lower, advertising costs were cheap, engagement costs were manageable. Most importantly, there was an information asymmetry between sellers and buyers. Customers weren't yet trained to compare. They didn't have habits of checking product origin, verifying quality, or scanning dozens of alternatives. They trusted ads because ads felt like discovery rather than manipulation. The seller's offer looked easy to buy because attention was cheap. You could show a creative, run tests, capture messages, and convert quickly. The platform's algorithm rewarded you for behavior that sellers could exploit, quick interaction, and fast impulse decisions. Then the seller's business model thrived on a classic asymmetry, low-cost supply and emotional upsell. Many sellers imported from China by searching bulk sources, grabbing products from factories, then scaling through advertising. They marked up aggressively, sometimes with huge gross margins that made ad spend feel safe. With large gross margin, even expensive campaigns would still look profitable. But underneath that, there's another hidden self-pattern. People confuse ad performance with market strength. They assume that because the ad generates sales, the business model must be defensible. They treat the platform as if it were a permanent ally. They don't notice that platforms evolve. As platforms mature, they clamp down, not because they're morally offended by marketers, but because they protect the user experience. When too many bad actors exploit loopholes, the platform experiences a quality problem. So it tightens moderation, it blocks accounts, it increases costs, it punishes behavior that creates low-value impressions. The sellers who used black tactics often get hit harder. They may temporarily mint profit, but the market eventually corrects. The correction changes the rules of the game, and if your strategy is built on loopholes, you don't have a strategy. You have a temporary hack. At the same time, customers mature. They start asking for proof. They become skeptical of bait-and-switch marketing. They want checking, warranties, authentic photos, and more transparent pricing. Conversion drops, cost per result rises, returns become a recurring threat. So the same funnel that once printed money becomes a treadmill. You keep running, but your speed no longer matters because the ground is moving against you. This is why many people eventually leave Facebook ads. It stops being a cash machine and starts becoming a channel where you must compete on brand value and product quality. That requires patience, product development, and service systems, not only creative captions. If your hidden self is addicted to quick wins, you hate that. You want the fast shortcut. You want ads to do your thinking. You want a set and forget mechanism. But the moment the market demands quality, shortcuts collapse. Now we get to the next migration, from Facebook ads toward Shopee and e-commerce platforms, roughly from 2018 to 2022. This shift isn't just technical, it's behavioral. Facebook ads offered passive discovery. The user is not necessarily searching, they're scrolling. Then an ad appears, and maybe curiosity leads to a purchase. Shopee, by contrast, creates proactive intent. People open the app because they already want something. They want comparisons, discounts, and quick fulfillment. That changes the psychological sequence. Instead of emotional impulse, you get evaluation. Customers browse, compare prices, check ratings, and read reviews. The market becomes more transparent. Sellers are forced to compete openly, and the competition is not only in brand, it's in operational performance. So Shopee had to grow its ecosystem, and it did it aggressively with subsidies, free shipping, voucher dumps, price promotions that trained people to expect cheapness as a baseline. This is where addiction enters the economic system. Customers don't just buy products, they get trained into a mindset. They wait for the next sale, the next code, the next cheap enough to justify impulse. The hidden self loves this too, because it turns buying into relief. It turns spending into a psychological reward. The user feels smart when they get a discount. They feel in control when they chase codes. They feel less guilty because it was on sale, as if the discount erased the deeper need behind the purchase. In the early phase, sellers who entered early benefited from high traffic and relatively lower competition. They built loyal customer lists. They used the platform's attention like free water. But once more sellers flood in, the economics collapse into a price war. To stay visible, you must optimize keyword strategies. You must participate in major sale campaigns. You must run promotions that can compress your margins to near zero, sometimes even losing money to buy reviews and volume. Operating on e-commerce is not about creativity, it's about relentless technical precision. Product titles must be keyword optimized, descriptions must be searchable, packaging must reduce cancellations and returns, logistics must reduce damage and complaints. The business becomes an operations battlefield, and the market consolidates over time. Eventually, the platform shifts from being friendly to small sellers and becomes a playground for mature sharks. Large brands and direct-to-consumer manufacturers dominate because they can optimize costs better, negotiate logistics, and tolerate lower margins longer. Small sellers can't always win because they're not only competing against other shops, they are competing against economies of scale and efficiency. So the model changes again. Middlemen lose leverage when F2C factory to consumer becomes easier. When supply chains compress, markup gets squeezed out of the middle. Now fast forward to 2022 onward, TikTok Shop and the era of shop entertainment, where content and commerce fuse into one emotional system. This is the newest version of the same story. Find a low-cost attention zone, then monetize it before saturation. TikTok Shop combines discovery and checkout seamlessly. It creates shopment, the merging of shopping and entertainment, and it doesn't rely on customers already having a need. It creates desire by pulling people into emotion. Where Shopee serves search, TikTok triggers impulse through narrative, identity, and spectacle. First, short-form videos distribute based on content performance rather than demographic targeting. That means a creative video can reach millions overnight without paying for traditional targeting the way older platforms require. A single creator can accidentally become an entire distribution channel. Second, live streaming. This is not marketing. This is psychological theater built to generate urgency and herd behavior in real time. Flash sales, countdown pressure, scarcity statements, crowds reacting on screen. Direct interaction that creates a sense of intimacy between seller and buyer. A buyer presses buy, not only because the product is good, but because their nervous system is activated. Their attention is captured. Their emotion is rising. Their brain wants to resolve the tension by taking action now. This is why impulse becomes rational when emotions are high. People don't buy because they calculated. They buy because their internal state demands closure. Then comes the affiliate revolution and the creator economy. TikTok Shop socializes distribution by letting sellers team up with KOCs and creators. The seller provides the product and operations. The KOC handles content creation and affiliate linkage. This creates speed. A new brand can enter the market faster because it borrows attention from established creators. One good campaign can create demand where there was none. Now the risks are different. TikTok doesn't just sell, it punishes. Content life cycles are short. A viral video might last days, so sellers face constant creative pressure and cannot relax. This creates chronic stress and burnout disguised as hustle. Also, policies can be unpredictable. Automated moderation plus human oversight means a small violation in speech or imagery can lead to account suspension or loss of funds. The stability people expect is rare. Stability is a luxury in a volatile platform ecosystem, so the business model becomes another psychological test. Can you keep producing while knowing the platform may change rules suddenly? Can you build redundancy when your entire income depends on a distribution algorithm that can turn hostile overnight? And this is where many people break internally. They cannot tolerate uncertainty, so they cling to old rules. Their hidden self wants certainty, even when the market is screaming that certainty doesn't exist. So let's zoom out to the future. When you look back across these platforms, you see macro rules, not marketing hacks, macro dynamics. The first rule is the death of the middleman. Direct sourcing and global logistics shorten the chain between factory and consumer. A factory in China can ship to a city in Vietnam in days for a reasonable cost. Platforms prioritize direct sellers or near direct models. That